Welcome back. At long last, we're going to be talking about episode 4 of Siberia, but first some housekeeping. Things are starting to get weird on Siberia, and there's a video I want to recommend that you watch. It's a clip from the History Channel show Ancient Aliens, and it talks specifically about the Valley of Death where the contestants are supposed to be competing. As with everything on the internet, I advise you to take it with a grain of salt, but it does help to know a little bit more about the legends that surround that particular region. So, without further interruption, let's start the review. Quick episode recap. The contestants got a warning.
Means get out.
Annie broke the sexual tension.
Don't worry about it.
Esther got a man on the inside.
This is what you call blood, right?
Miljan made a terrible joke.
I was just kidding, I swear. I'm just kidding!
Johnny lost his lunch.
Trying to get some food, but something got to before me, looks like.
Daniel and Irene adopted a pet rock.
Something more permanent would be nice.
Miljan made a few new friends.
This is my friend Agdi.
Victoria's hallucinations came true.
It's like the sky's on fire.
Nico put those rugby skills to work.
Come on. Stop it! Nico, stop it! He didn't do it!
And Carolina revealed her treasonous secret.
I didn't want to
what?
burn it down. I didn't want to set you up. They told me to.
I may be the only person who feels this way, but having an extra week in between proper episodes made it feel like forever since episode 3. Episode 4 picks up right where the last one left off after Johnny was expelled from camp by the other contestants. The conversation in the men's cabin turns to strategy as Daniel comments that he would prefer to have everyone work together like Nico always suggests. But Miljan offers up a valid observation. As a professional athlete, Nico plays games for a living. He's adept at physical competition, and at the same time understands mental competition. From what I've seen of rugby, it's an incredibly physical sport, but at the same time it's also very strategic. It's very possible that Nico has an agenda, even though he's made some blunders here and there. Annie and Natalie were featured prominently again this week, although this time around we got some good backstory for Natalie through the different comments that she made. The big moment was of course when Annie kissed Natalie in a moment of emotional desperation. It was shown in the previews for the episode, so it wasn't very surprising or shocking, but what made it worth noting was what happened afterwards. The confession cam we got from Annie was honest and vulnerable. It made it clear that she wasn't trying to play on Natalie's emotions, rather she was trying to reach out and make a meaningful connection. At the end of the episode, we get to see that Natalie is willing to open herself up to Annie and reciprocate her affection.
I just thought I'm sort of open to love in any form right now.
It's not so much about strategy or playing a game, it's about finding a human connection in a high-stress environment. It's a very humanizing thing to bring to a show like this. And so we transition from meaningful human contact to malicious human contact. We saw this week that Esther used her feminine wiles to lure one of the cameramen into a compromising situation and used that to blackmail him into helping her win. I'm not surprised that it happened. Esther's been established as a character who is willing to do things that other contestants would not do. She manipulated Miljan for her own comfort. She poisoned Victoria so that she would have less competition. And now she's blackmailing a crew member for her own benefit. Esther has never, since the pilot, played fair. And why should she start now? I want to make a quick note here and say that this sort of thing could only happen on a show like Siberia. If a contestant tried blackmailing a cameraman on an actual reality show, chances are we wouldn't see it happening in the final cut. It would have been discovered and those involved would be dismissed from the show. This is the kind of entertainment we get when we all agree to throw aside the notion of reality and enjoy things as they come. Now, one thing that was not enjoyable was Esther's scene with Miljan when she came to get her stuff from the men's cabin. I've always been suspicious of Miljan, never quite sure about what he says and does, but this scene in particular made me jump up in my seat and shout at my television. Up until this point, the contestants have mostly kept their hands to themselves. So to have Miljan explode the way he did and have Esther around the neck was very troubling to see. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know why it was happening. I didn't know what Esther was going to do. Then the show came back from commercial and suddenly Miljan is all smiles and joking. This scene hasn't set right with me ever since I first saw it.
I'm joking. You know me. I always joke around. I was just joking with you. I didn't get it. Seriously. She just freaked out.
Even so, I can see why it was included. Miljan has a dark side. He's capable of violence. We're supposed to be off-put by his presence. And this scene hammered that home very effectively. Meanwhile, in the woods, Carolina is off looking for Johnny after Nico failed to deliver on his promise of showing her a dead tiger. Johnny is actually doing quite well on his own. He may not have a cabin to sleep in, but he's got a lighter and some spring traps, and that's good enough that he's not worried about being alone. He would have had a nice fresh deer to butcher if something hadn't come along and ripped it off at the leg. Anyway, I would have preferred to see a longer conversation between Johnny and Carolina. Their exchange was short and rough, almost as if it was there to just make it clear to everyone watching back home that Johnny felt betrayed and Carolina felt remorse. Having watched episode 3, I don't think I needed to be reminded of how those two feel, but then again, I watch each episode of Siberia at least 3 or 4 times, so maybe I need to cut them some slack there. Not since Romeo and Juliet have I seen a pair of young people more destined to perish. Between the longing looks and the tokens of affection, every fiber of my being is screaming that something bad is going to happen to Daniel and Irene. They're just too innocent and hopeful as a couple. Despite the fact that their every interaction foreshadows tragedy, you can't help but root for them. I mean, when Irene told Daniel about her philosophy on giving flowers as gifts, he gave her a rock. Okay, I know how lame that last statement sounded, but in the context of the show, it's actually a sweet gesture. After Miljan attacked Esther, I was ready to write him off for the rest of the episode. Then he found the totem tree. I may be the only one who feels this way, but I'm having a hard time distinguishing between when Miljan is joking and being serious. Honestly, this whole business with him speaking to trees, following symbols, digging up books has me very seriously spooked. And speaking of spooked, I'd like to know what's up with Mr. Spear in Hand, hiding out in the trees and throwing spears with scary notes attached to them. Mark my words, nothing good is coming out of this side story. Miljan has already started down this rabbit hole, and I don't think he's playing with a full deck of cards anymore. Speaking of crazy, what happened with the lights in the sky? They're not a normal aurora borealis, to be sure. Put Siberia up against a video of the real aurora, and you'll notice some pretty big differences. For one, the lights in the sky seem to be laid out in a sort of grid pattern, as opposed to the fluid paths of a natural occurrence. For another, the lights in Siberia were much brighter than other auroras appear to be. I know there are some out there who would prefer Siberia not to have a science fiction alien element to it, but if you dig into the speculation surrounding the Valley of Death, you'd be hard-pressed not to find aliens involved. I do have a theory about the lights in the sky, and the totems, and the creature, all of it. My theory is that the Valley of Death is essentially a giant cage. We know there's something in the woods that's supernatural in some way. Whatever it is killed Tommy, a tiger, and probably that deer Johnny caught in his trap. We know that whatever is in the woods is dangerous. And what happens to dangerous things? They get contained where they can't hurt anyone. The lights in the sky look to me like a force field, a giant dome of energy designed to contain whatever is stalking the contestants. This, of course, means the involvement of aliens, but I don't think we'll be meeting any aliens beyond the creature this season. Although I'm sure by the season finale we'll know if I'm right or wrong, which I have been wrong in the past. The strangest side effect of the lights in the sky was Carolina and Johnny's apparent memory loss. Carolina was the first to stumble back into camp, all cut and bruised up from what we don't know, which set Nico off in a rage. Do you remember those blunders I mentioned earlier? This is definitely one of those blunders. Nico, the self-appointed leader of the group, grabs a sickle and heads into the woods to hunt down Johnny. What was Nico planning on doing if he found Johnny in the woods? Was he going to kill him? For someone who is so convinced that it's all a game, that level of intent for violence is unprecedented. It's just a good thing that Sam was with him the whole time, otherwise he probably would have done something serious. Of course, neither Johnny nor Carolina knew what happened. They blacked out. I'm going to venture a guess that their blackouts were caused by exposure to the flash that followed the earthquake and preceded the lights in the sky. I'm willing to bet that Johnny and Carolina were arguing when the earthquake started. Because of the quake, they either fell or something fell on them, and then the flash caused them to black out. Of course, like I said before, I could be wrong. That's how predictions work, I'm afraid. Maybe the biggest surprise came the next morning when Carolina revealed to Johnny and the rest of the contestants that she burned down the food shack at the request of the producers.
They told me to.
Who's they?
producers.
This is where the fourth wall crumbles a little bit. The reality of the matter is that all of the contestants are actors telling the story of contestants on a reality show, but now one of the contestants is revealed as an actor. So she is an actor portraying a contestant on a show where all of the contestants are actors. You can see how this could get really confusing really quickly. The trick here is to remember that in the course of the narrative, everyone except Carolina at this point is legitimately playing to win. Carolina, in the course of the narrative, is an actress placed on the show to sow contention and create drama. This would make it simple if not for Carolina's interest in Johnny, which is dividing her loyalties between the contestants and the producers. Sure, it sounds convoluted, but at the end it only serves to add new layers to Carolina's character. And now it's time for the Tweet of the Week. This week's tweet comes from @AnnMarieLessMusic. It says, "Don't be the person who needs schooling in the difference between #fiction and #fate, or carry on and keep us highly entertained, #Siberia." I picked this tweet specifically because I've always been annoyed by people who are upset that the show is scripted, instead of just sitting back and enjoying the show, and it's kind of nice to see a cast member echoing that sentiment. This week's episode of Siberia was dense and moved quickly, but the breakneck pace at which it moved from one story to the other worked in the show's favor to keep me hooked. At this point, we're 4 shows into the series, and I would have to say that this one is the best one since the pilot. The cast is down to a manageable size, they all have interesting storylines, and things are looking to get much, much worse for everyone in that camp. It's really a fun time, and if you can have fun while watching a television show, then the writers, directors, cast, and crew are all doing their jobs right. As always, please comment below to keep the conversation going, subscribe to my channel for more of these weekly reviews of Siberia, and follow me on Twitter to see what I have to say during each episode. So until next week, I'm Rick D, and thank you for watching.